Mm. So if we analyze why we suffer a lot in our life, as well as if we analyze why the world is suffering due to many different circumstances, challenges, even though there are external causes and conditions that contribute towards our problems, individual as well as the problem in the world. But if you go deeper than that, then main cause is our own human beings, unsubdued, untamed, undisciplined mind, what we call defilement, delusions. When we have those delusions, even we have some small challenge externally due to that delusion, then we intensify, multiply that problem. That challenge is much more, 10 times, and thereby multiply the pain and sufferings. And therefore, we suffer much. For example, just one example, someone criticizes us or says something nasty, intentionally, unintentionally. Someone is upset at that moment. That very short moment, for a couple of moments, maybe a few minutes, he or she was upset, frustrated. And then in that moment, he or she says something nasty, hurtful, something. And so definitely that hurtful speech, there was that. We can't deny there was no that. But then that is in 1 minute or few seconds, and then it's gone. It wasn't continuing. The person wasn't continuing to be nasty. It wasn't continuing to be, hurtful. Even they don't have that frustration, anger. It was just one moment and say something in that moment. It's gone. But then when we have kind of anger, hatred from that, then we keep that for days, weeks, months, and that's how we suffer. The word itself was just a 1 second or a few minutes. And that is one example of, even though if you don't hold on that, because if you don't have anger, hatred, we will not hold, or resentment, we will not hold on that. If you don't hold on that, then it's 1 moment, 1 minute, you heard it and it's gone. You don't have to suffer for days, weeks, months, years. Not only that, then we continue to create our own stories around that, and big drama and story around that, and make it much more worse and bigger than what it was. And that the suffer, the pain that we go through over so much is not because of that situation. That's itself because we are carrying that. Because we are carrying that. If you decide not to carry on, we don't have to suffer. But we carry on because of our own defilement, delusion, such as anger, hatred, resentment in relation to that. And that is same with all others. That's just to give example of that. So through the lasting suffering and pain doesn't come from outside, it actually comes from our own state of mind. And especially if we have developed, higher state of mind, higher realizations, such as true loving kindness, compassion, sense of humility, patience. Then even someone said that, you don't take it personal, you can just let it go. You don't even have to suffer, even for one moment. A lot of bodhisattvas, and practitioners, more advanced practitioners, because they're advanced, it's like they just, as though they didn't hear it, it doesn't really affect them. They can just kind of not take it seriously, not take it personally. And so you don't even have to experience even one moment of that, even during that moment. So again, even at that moment, even if someone said something like that, hurtful thing, even for 1 second, 1 minute, even that, by changing our mind, then it doesn't affect in a way that make us painful and suffering. And so, and I think it is important for us to really recognize that. If we really recognize that, then we will pay more attention to our own mind and trying to work with our own mind instead of all the time thinking the cause of our pain is outside and always trying to fix outside and not really working with our own mind. And I think, and because of that, why we still continue to have all this conflict, pain and suffering on individual level, on a global level, And all these defilements or delusions, those harmful negative emotions, again, they're all, as we have been mentioning, they all manifest or arises due to the ignorance, the fundamental ignorance. And so to overcome all these delusions permanently, then we have to cut the very root of all this delusion, that is fundamental ignorance. And to cut the fundamental ignorance, then you need to have the wisdom realizing the emptiness or ultimate truth. And in order to cultivate that realization of the wisdom, then we need to meditate. We need to reflect, meditate. In order to reflect and meditate correctly, unmistakably, and we need to study, learn more about those meditations and practices. And so therefore, for that very reason, that we have been kind of following the Shantidevas and chapter 9 on wisdom. And within that, after he has explained different analysis, different examinations, then come to where he says we are in a point where he is explaining how having a correct understanding and realization of emptiness help us to free from all the suffering and the samsara and the delusion, and why, due to not correctly understanding and not having that realizations, keep us in the samsara, and that make us continue to suffer. in the samsara. So I think that is where, and I think we are on verse, I think page number 155. I think we finished verse number 157 last week, even though it seems I might have missed 156, but anyway. Yeah, so in terms of 156, it said, even though they repeatedly come to happy existence and experience much pleasure there, upon dying, and they fall for a long time into the unbearable suffering of lower realms. What it's saying, even supposedly that we are born in a higher rebirth as human beings, and in a human lives, of course, normally there is a lot of, sufferings and pain with, sickness, with aging, death, as well as many others challenges, that we face, in relationship, in finance, so many different challenges in that, But even though if we don't have all these challenges, even though maybe we have good health, maybe we don't have a really big issue with the health, and even we have a pretty good relationship, and even with the financial situation good, even though relatively, even though everything might be in good conditions, but still we have to die one day. Still we have to die one day, We cannot keep on going forever. Maximum we can live after 120, if we are lucky enough. Very few from those 7 billion of people, very few can be able to live. Even if we live up to 120, after that we have to die. We have to die. And once we die, our consciousness continue carrying the old karmic imprint. And so if we have a very strong negative karmic imprint that has not been purified, and then that will be activated, and then we can be due to that strong negative karma being activated at the time of death due to certain cause and condition, then we can be born in a lower rebirth, and then in lower rebirth, then we'll continue to suffer a lot of pain and suffering. So basically what it's saying, even you have a good life in this life, pretty good life, unless we cut all the delusions, you will continue to experience suffering in the futures. So therefore, of course, if there is no continuity of future life, and if this is the only life, and then if we don't have to experience so much pain in this, then that is it. But from Buddhist point of view, that is not the case. Our consciousness continue, and we continue to take life. And what kind of life rebirth we take, it depends on our karma. And as long as we have negative karma, as long as we have delusions, we'll continue to create negative karma. As long as we have negative karma, those negative karma can be activated easily. And when they are activated, then we can take a rebirth in the lower rebirth and have a lot of suffering. And even we have a higher rebirth by activating the virtuous karma, still, again, we could still have a lot of other pain and suffering, you know. And so therefore, it is not the final, it's not the ultimate solutions to stop the suffering permanently. And the only way to do that is to overcome the delusions. And so that is the way he's saying, in order to overcome the delusions, you need to cut the very root of the delusion, the fundamental ignorance. For that, you need to have correct realization emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So that is why. So then I think 157, I think I discussed last time. And then 158, I shall continue experience limitless ocean of misery, unbearable and beyond analogies. Likewise, through not having realized emptiness, I have little strength for virtues. And my human life of leisure endowment is indeed very short. So basically the saying, you know, as long as we don't have the realization of emptiness, wisdom realizing emptiness, we will continue to have that fundamental ignorance. As long as we have that fundamental ignorance, then due to that ignorance, other negative emotions, defilement, delusions will arise, such as attachments, anger, and so forth. As long as those negative emotions arises, we will continue to suffer. Very moment when those negative emotions arise, immediately we experience pain and suffering just by having those negative emotions. And not only that, due to those negative emotions, then we create more negative karma that bring more pain and suffering in the future as a consequence of that. And therefore, we continue to suffer endlessly in the samsara until we cut the very root of all these delusions. And you know, if we don't have realization of emptiness, you know, even when you have this precious human rebirth, you know, and even if we have some wish to practice the Dharma, you know, some inspirations, some desire, some wish to practice the Dharma, and even when we try to practice the Dharma, you know, we have very little strength in our practice in the virtues. You know, there's not a strong inspirations. There's no strong, our practice in the virtues is very weak. But once we have realization of emptiness, your practice of your virtues and your practice of Dharma become much more stronger, you know. And even we try to practice, you know, with that kind of weak, not a strong practice and a weak practice, you know, and then our life is very short, you know, and so in very short lifetime, even if we try to practice with such a very weak mind, then our practice doesn't become so strong to be able to really have a strong impact and transformations in overcoming the delusions and the fundamental ignorance. And so therefore, we have to realize that. And then next one, 159, also I strive hard to live long and avoid illness. So, you know, and I'm concerned with hunger, rest, sleep, and injured by others, and keep meaningless company with the childish. So, even we have a such as higher rebirth as a human beings and have a pleasure, you know. But again, you know, because we know our life will end because there is death, so we strive very hard to live long, you know. And even we try very hard to live long, it's not easy, you know. And then we try to avoid illness, try to keep it healthy, and so, you know, as the way to keep our healthy, then we spend a lot of time to exercise and all of that. So then again, we lose the opportunity to practice whatever time we spend in order to keep healthy. So we have to invest our time, energy, resource towards that, you know, and then if we do get sickness, then again we need to treat it, and sometimes the medicine are not effective, and so forth, you know. And then as long as we have such samsaric human life, we have to eat, you know. We can't be alive without eating. So therefore, when we have hunger, then we eat, and then we need rest. Our body needs rest. Our mind needs rest. Then we need to rest, you know. And then we need to sleep. Then we sleep, you know. And then, so when you see that, then, you know, to practice the Dharma, the time is very limited. You know, a lot of time we kind of, even we don't want to waste all this time on other things, but just having this human body, this samsaric body, it requires all of this need to do just to keep alive and be healthy. You know, yeah, we have to spend, you know, 6, 7, at least 4, 5, 6, 7 hours sleep every day, you know, and in order to be healthy and survive, you know, we spend a lot of time in cooking, preparing for cooking, eating, and washing. So much time to kind of maintain your place, and then resting, and all of that. And then sometimes we are injured by others, intentionally and unintentionally. And then again, trying to heal from that, trying to recover from that. And sometimes, you know, we are kind of, we have interactions with a companion, you know, like a childish, who are not necessarily very much enthusiasm about the virtues, about the practice. And so again, we get a lot of time distracted with them. And then we kind of lose a lot of time in the meaningless things. And through that, then if you really see it like that way, then there's very little time to really focus and practice the Dharma, to practice the virtues, to practice the spiritual path, to practice, to engage into our time, energy, resource, to reduce those negative emotions and to increase and improve those positive emotions, you know. So therefore, here Shantideva is advising, you know, therefore, you know, you should start now, without wasting the time, now, in order to free yourself from the samsara, to free yourself from all the suffering, to free from all the delusions. if you don't start from now, one, if we are again born in lower realm, it becomes almost extremely difficult. And even we are born as a higher rebirth as human beings, we have very limited time. And so therefore, without thinking, we have a lot of time. Without thinking and deceiving ourselves, thinking, oh, I have a lot of time on my side to practice in the futures. Instead, we should try to put effort to practice now without postponing in that way, with that understanding and realizations. So that is what the meaning of that. So the next one. Therefore, this life swiftly pass with no meaning. So if you see then our lives go very fast, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. 5 years pass by, 10 years pass by, without realizing that. It seems like it was just a couple of years when 10 years had passed away, And that is how you feel, Sometimes when I look back and say, oh, already been 7, 8 years since I've been here, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I just came here in New Mexico a couple of years ago. The time passed by, and I've already been almost 6 months here in New Mexico this year, and just feel like it was only a couple of months. Time passed very fast. Time goes very fast without realizing that, So being aware of that, how time passed very quickly, and then we realize, oh, in those 10 years, what practice I have done, what virtues I have done, what meaningful that I have done, something that I can rejoice, be proud of. When we look, then maybe sometime we might find, there isn't much. So therefore, so realizing that, and so therefore making sure that it doesn't end up like that, but instead, when you look back, then you rejoice by saying, oh, during those 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, I have done these virtues, I've done this practice, I've been able to study the Dharma, reflect, contemplate, meditate, different practice that I have been able to do, Therefore, my life has been some meaningful. I've been able to change a little bit. I've been able to transform a little bit. My attitude has changed a little bit. My attitude and mind had transformed a little bit. And so we should feel that way instead of feeling passing without feeling any meaningless, And it is very hard to find chance to investigate reality. And we know, even though it's so important to have the wisdom realizing the emptiness through investigating, analyzing the nature of self and other phenomena. But because of all these worldly things and activities, because of all these worldly things that we need to take care of, we hardly find time to really investigate, analyze, reflect, contemplate. We struggle to find the energy, resource, and time to do that. And so therefore, in this state, where is there the means to reverse? If that is the case, then in such state, where is the mean to reverse the samsara? Where is the mean to reverse the samsara, mean to end the samsara? If you don't have that wisdom, then we don't have the tools, the means to reverse the samsara and to free from the samsara. If you don't have that practice and the wisdom then we don't have the tools, the way out from the samsara, the means to overcome the delusions, and thereby overcoming the sufferings, then we wouldn't have that. This beginningless habit of grasping a true existence, So if we don't have that wisdom, then we'll continue to have that ignorance, grasping whatever objects appear to our mind as a truly existence all the time, that which we have been from the beginningless lifetime. From the beginningless lifetime, our ignorance has always been grasping, clinging to the objects as a truly existence. And due to that, then anger, attachments arises. And due to that, then many other delusions, such as greediness, arrogant, jealousy, and many others, resentment, and many other arises. And through that, then we suffer, and we also bring more harm and pain to others as well. So there will be no end to that. It will continue to that same that we have been doing. Sometimes it's interesting, we keep on doing same thing and expecting different result each time. And we haven't been successful, by following the ignorance and the delusions and hoping that will give us true satisfaction, true love, true satisfaction, true joy and happiness. And we have tried, and we keep on finding that is not the case. We keep on being disappointed. Again, we keep on doing that from the habit from the beginning. We keep on doing that. And so here Shantideva is saying, it's not going to have a different result by doing the same thing. And the only way to end that is to have the wisdom relies on the emptiness. And to develop that wisdom relies on the emptiness, then you need to practice, meditate. And therefore you need to practice. And it is the best time to do that now, when we have all the right conducive condition to do that. In the future, we might not have that same conducive conditions, and even you wish to do that at that point, then it's almost too late because you don't have the right conducive condition. At the moment, we have all the right conducive condition to be able to do that. And so therefore he is encouraging us, is advising us, instructing us not to waste this great opportunity and utilize it to free oneself from the delusion and the samsara, and thereby the sufferings permanently. So that is the meaning of that. Then next one, furthermore, devils are exerting themselves to cast us into vast unfortunate realms. So therefore again, even when you have precious human, even we have a human life, a lot of time, we don't meet the Dharma. We are born in a place where there is no access to the Dharma, And you can see among 7 billion people, not everyone has access to the Dharma, And then those of us who have access to the Dharma, even when you have access to the Dharma, sometimes there are people who are not interested due to their imprint, due to their karma, Even they have access to them, but they don't have interest. And then there are some who have access and who have interest. And even if you have interest, then a lot of internal, external challenges to practice the Dharma, sometimes our health, sometimes our different situations, and a lot of time internal challenges, you know. And so the devil here is our internal challenges, you know, our own, you know, selfish attitudes, our own ignorance, our own delusions are the one which is the main kind of devils, you know, our own doubt and so forth, laziness and so forth, you know, discourage or from engaging in a practice and to put effort into that, you know. And through that, you know, they show us many mistaken paths. So due to our delusions, then, you know, it takes us in a mistaken path. Instead in the virtues, then those delusions lead us into non-virtues. Instead of leading into be more compassion, then due to those delusions, it leads us to be more mean, cruel, you know. Instead of leading us to be more content, those delusions lead us to be more dissatisfied, more greediness. Instead of leading into the path to be more humble and humility, those delusions lead us to be more kind of in the mistaken path as a more, you know, to become a more arrogant and so forth. And so that is how, you know, and it's hard to resolve the doubt about the perfect way, you know. And so due to those delusions, then it leads us to have a lot of doubt in our practice, in our path. And due to those doubt in our path, in our practice, then we are diverted from the path and lose the directions and lose the path, you know. So, and why is it so difficult to practice the Dharma? You know, why is it so difficult to practice the Dharma? Basically, because of our delusion is so strong. Mainly that, because of our delusion is so strong, and therefore our virtuous mind is weak. And so in order to make our practice of our spiritual path, our practice of the Dharma, in order to make our practice of Dharma, in order to make transformation of our heart, our mind to become easy, we have to reduce the delusions, because that is the one who is making most difficult. And to reduce the delusion, then we need to have the wisdom, realizing the emptiness. Again, it all comes back to that. And so therefore, again and again, reminding us why it's so important, crucial to have the correct wisdom that realizes correctly the emptiness. You know, so I think that is, and so if we don't have the wisdom realizing the emptiness, you know, then as mentioned before many times, you know, the fundamental ignorance will continue to be there. As long as that fundamental ignorance is there, we will continue, the other delusion will continue to manifest, arises. And if it arises, those delusion arises, you know, then due to those delusions, we will continue to create more and more negative karma and non-virtuous, unwholesome actions. Even we don't want to, you know, even you don't want to be angry. When anger arises, you know, you have no control, you become angry. Even you don't want to be, even we don't want to be so much greediness, but when our strong craving, attachment arises, we can't stop. Even you want to be kind, compassionate person, but when our anger, hatred, ill will feeling, resentment arises, it's hard to be love, hard to be compassionate and kind. So due to that, so we'll continue to create negative karma. And even those negative, even we might have purified all the previous negative karma, but as long as we're delusion, we'll continue to create more negative karma, new negative karma. And due to those negative karma, strong negative karma, then, if we have more stronger negative karma, then, the chances of taking rebirth in lower realm increase more. And the chance to have a high rebirth decrease. And therefore, that's where the next one, 162, it will be hard to find leisure of human being again, And so therefore, if we have more stronger negative karma, then more likely lower rebirth. And if it's a lower rebirth, then it becomes much more harder to have precious human rebirth. It becomes much to have a precious human rebirth, we need to have strong pure practice of moral ethic, supported by the practice such as generosity and other perfections. And which is not so easy if we kind of analyze ourselves, how easy it is for us to practice pure moral ethic, how easy it is us to practice generosity and other perfections. It's not so easy. And so since it's not so easy, and then if we see how easy it is to create negative karma, isn't it? I don't know about you, but for me, it's so easy to create negative karma. It's so easy to have those delusions. So easy. But when it comes to the virtuous practice, such as keeping moral, ethical, pure moral, ethical, and other perfection practice, it's not easy. You have to put so much effort. Even with effort, it's so hard. So that being the case, if the cause is difficult, then result is also going to be rare. And so therefore, that is why it's saying, why it's hard to find leisure of human life again. Of course, for some individual who doesn't have any difficulty practicing the virtues, creating positive karma, to engage in who doesn't have any difficulty and who have a strong practice of ethical discipline and other perfections, then of course high rebirth such as precious human life wouldn't be a difficult or rare for them, But if those practices are difficult, then it would be more difficult and rare to have that. And so it's all individuals. It's individuals. And if I look in myself, then it seems difficult. And so therefore, it's hard to find leisure human again. And even you find a human life, high rebirth, such as human life, and extremely difficult to find the presence of the Buddhas, Even because from Buddhist point of view, from Buddhist point of view, there are times when Buddha does not manifest in the world. And there are times when Buddha manifested. In our cases, Buddha manifested in this world 2,600 years ago. So even though we didn't kind of meet him directly, but his teachings are still alive. And we have access to that. But it is not always the case. The teaching will decline after some time. And then the people will not have access to the Dharma, And so it's extremely difficult to encounter the Dharma. You need a lot of merit, a lot of positive karma in order to encounter the Dharma. So encountering the Dharma is not easy. And so we should, I think sometimes we can become hard on ourselves, thinking, I must be a very bad person. I must have created so much negative karma, because sometimes when we face challenges, sometimes we have different challenges, different difficulty challenges when we face, then sometimes we wonder, what did I do something negative karma? I must have been a very bad person, or I must have been very bad in the past. Sometimes we just think that negative, Instead of that, we should think positively and rejoice, saying, oh, I have this precious human rebirth. I must have done really good thing in the past. To have this precious human rebirth, you need to create so much virtues, so much positive karma. That means in the past, in my life, I must have practiced many virtues, positive karma, to have this precious human life. And to have met the Dharma, that means I must have created really incredible merit and virtues. And not only have met the Dharma, not only have met the Dharma, but to have the interest in the Dharma. And not only have the interest in the Dharma, we are trying, at least we are trying. We are not perfect. We are not perfect, but at least we have the wish, and we are trying to practice, engage in the practice. That means I must have created a lot of virtues, a lot of merit. So sometimes I think it's really important to rejoice in that way. Especially for the Westerner, I kind of notice people tend to be much more negative and harsh on themselves. And I often hear sometimes when they are encountering different challenges, and then they say, what bad I must have done, but hardly think what good thing you must have done to have this human rebirth, met the Dharma, and have had the interest, and to be able to practice all of that. So I think I just wanted to it just came in my mind, so I just wanted to bring that as well. So it is saying, to meet the Dharma, extremely difficult. And it is hard to forsake this flood of disturbing conceptions, and we all know that, how hard, how difficult it is to abandon, to overcome all these negative, disturbing emotions, how difficult it is to minimize, to reduce, and to overcome, we put a lot of effort, not to allow ourselves to be influenced or controlled by the anger, hatred, resentment, but we struggle. We put a lot of effort not to be too greedy, not to have too much, greediness, not to have too much craving, attachments. It's not easy. We try not to be too much, pride and arrogant. We try, not to be too much ignorant. We try, not to be too much impatience, jealousy, and so forth. But not easy. It's so not easy because of so much imprint and so much familiarity with those negative emotions from the past. So strong. The imprint is so strong. Even when we are trying very hard, it's not so easy at the very beginning, not so easy in the beginning. And because of that, because of those disturbing conception or delusion or defilement, at last, sentient beings will continue to suffer. As long as they have the delusions, as long as they will continue to suffer. And not only sense ourselves, as long as with a delusion, we will continue to suffer. And therefore, if we do not wish suffering for ourselves and for other sentient beings, then we have to overcome all these disturbing negative emotions, the defilement, the delusions. And the way to overcome that is by overcoming the very root of that, the fundamental ignorance. And the way to do that is to have the wisdom realizing the emptiness. And that is why, again, we suffer due to delusions. And delusion arises due to ignorance. And the ignorance is still there due to not having the realization of emptiness. So it all comes to having a realization, understanding of emptiness, or not understanding and not having realization of emptiness. And so we will have a short break, okay? So does anyone has any questions? No questions, wow. I think we haven't had questions for a long time. Seems like everyone's, maybe everyone is having a realization of emptiness. One of my teachers, who passed away 5 years ago, one of my main teachers, Ruth, whose reincarnation has just been recognized, found. He used to say, he used to always encourage us to ask questions and ask if we have any questions. And sometimes when we don't have any questions, he used to say, either you understood everything or you didn't understand anything. If you don't have questions, then there's two possibilities. Either you understood everything or you didn't understand anything, therefore you don't have the, So anyway, so if you don't have questions, then of course we will kind of continue the next verses, 163, or indeed is worth feeling sorrow. Sorrow here means compassion, okay? For those adrift in the river of pain, who although they experience great misery, but unaware of suffering they go through. So here is saying, if we have some understanding of emptiness, even is a small understanding of emptiness, then that will help us to feel compassion for other sentient beings who are driven by the river of the pain of, aging, sickness, the pain of aging, the pain of sickness, aging, and death, and all other sufferings that come in between, Why? Because we understand, even though they do not wish, even though none of them wish any pain and suffering, just like ourselves. No sentient beings wish or want wish suffering and pain. Everyone want to avoid the pain and suffering. All sentient beings want to avoid the pain and suffering. Nobody wish the pain and suffering. But even they do not wish pain and suffering, they continue to experience the waves of continuity of suffering and pain. Why? Why they suffer? Why they suffer? Because, due to the ignorance and due to the delusions, they are not aware of the main cause of the suffering, and therefore they continue to engage into the cause of the sufferings. Due to the ignorance, believing the suffering is happiness, and therefore the cause of suffering, believing that is the cause of happiness. And therefore, they continue to engage into even though they do not want suffering, but they continue to engage in the cause of suffering due to not understanding true nature of suffering and the cause of the suffering. And therefore, they continue to suffer. And therefore, when you see their suffering, why they suffer, where does their suffering come from? And whether that suffering can be ceased. When you understand emptiness, then you understand, that each of those suffering can be ceased by ceasing the cause of those suffering. By ceasing the cause of those suffering, the delusions. Can delusion be ceased? Can the delusion be overcome? Yes, the delusion can be overcome because they all those delusions are founded on fundamental ignorance. And the fundamental ignorance can be overcome, can be eliminated. If the foundation, the cause, ignorance is overcome, then you can see the delusions that arises on the basis of that foundation can be overcome. If we overcome the delusion, then we can overcome the delusion as well as the negative karma. If we overcome that, then we can overcome all the suffering. Therefore, the sentient being doesn't have to suffer. So then when you understand, even that they don't need to suffer, but they are suffering, so then you feel more compassionate. And then you can have compassion for them. And so through that, then again, when you have a realization, understanding of the emptiness, it gives rise to compassion and more stronger compassion. If we don't have a understanding of emptiness, then it doesn't give rise to very strong cultivation of strong compassion. So then again, also that's why. And so therefore, through that understanding, then we need to try to cultivate and develop as much as compassion as possible to all the sentient beings who are suffering. So that is why. And then, for example, so here now explaining why, due to ignorance, sentient beings confuse suffering to be happiness, and therefore they engage into the cause of suffering, and therefore they experience, for example, in our life, we feel if we have a better health, you will be more happy, less sufferings. If we have better job, better financial situation, we will be more happy. We will not be suffering. And that is why we all try to run to make money so that we can have this and this and this and this, all things that we think that will give us more happy. And that will make us less to have less sufferings. And so that is where that is why whole our life is for that. But if we really analyze this, are there those, by relying on external conditions or factors, conditions, do they can really bring us true happiness, or do they bring suffering? A lot of times it brings more suffering than the happiness. A lot of time. Because they are not true cause of happiness. And those sensory pleasures are not true happiness. But still, due to ignorance, we believe those are the true happiness. And therefore we kind of trying to collect the cause and conditions that give rise, that give to that kind of sensory pleasures. But all of those sensory pleasures, we know they don't last, and also they give us to lead to a lot of disappointment, and suffering and pain, and so that is how we get mistaken. And so similarly, here is giving example. For example, some ascetics wash themselves again and again, and others repeatedly enter fire. But although they thereby suffer greatly, they pride themselves in being content. So I think it's just giving one example. There are some, practices in some spiritual path where, as a part of achieving liberations, then the way to achieve liberations is through purifications, and the way to purify yourself is to kind of beat up your body. They believe if you torture your body, then you purify more. Certain spiritual path. So like sometimes they hit their body until they start bleeding. And the more you are able to do that, they believe there's better purification. Better purifications, then that is the path to liberation. And some of them jumping into the fires, some of them walking on the nails, and some of them washing, believing that if you wash in the holy river Ganges, then all your negative karma will be purified. And through that purification, then you can achieve nirvana. So there are, through that belief, through those belief that so they torture themselves, their body a lot as a way of purifications. And so again, Shandeva is saying, basically he's saying that is mistaken, and that is mistaken, and that is, again, you cannot achieve nirvana or liberation just by that kind of practice, just by kind of beating up yourself in order for a purification that way. And so again, that is mistaken. That is, again, just like that, like us, that is mistaken to be the pure path to liberation when it is not. And so that is what it is saying. And so due to beating up themselves, they suffer greatly, physically greatly, because when you jump into the fire, when you beat up yourself with the whips or with the chains, or when you walk on the nails and so forth, there's a lot of physical pain. Even though there's a lot of physical pain, they pride themselves in being content, because they believe or they feel that is the way to purify and way to achieve liberations. And so, but that is saying not really recognizing what's the main cause of the liberations. Due to that mistake, then, even they do not wish, even they want to free from the suffering, they continue to suffer. And so similarly, that is how we sentient beings, even we do not want suffering, but we continue to engage in the cause of suffering due to the ignorance. So that is what it's saying. And that ignorance comes because of, due to lack of wisdom, relies on emptiness. Similarly, those who mistake their suffering for joy and live as though there is no aging and death, are the first of all killed by the Lord of Death, and then experience unbearable misery of falling in the lower realms. So again, as I mentioned before, we similarly, we all sentient beings, ordinary sentient beings, unenlightened, unrealized sentient beings, full of ignorance, we believe the suffering to be joy, the nature of suffering to be real joy, and then we live our life as though we are not going to age and we are not going to die, as though that is not coming. Always feeling, when I was young, I used to think, well, when you are very old, when you are like 50 or 60, now I'm in that age, I don't feel like I'm so old. Feel like you are very young, and probably you feel like, oh, maybe when you are in 70, 80, that is old, aging and old. But again, when you reach that, you still feel you are young. You feel, hundreds, and that is how this deceived mind, grasping sense of permanent in that way. The aging is not, even when we are getting old, even when we are aging, still believing that we are not aging, we are not getting old, and continue to think that way. Even though death is coming closer and closer, we still feel, oh, I still have 50 more years. I still have 40 more years. And as we go, you still think, oh, I still have 10 years, 20 years. Even you are going to die next week, still you feel, oh, I will have 1 more years, 2 more years. Even someone who is going to die now, still you feel, oh, I still will live 1 more years, few months. So we always kind of feel and live as the aging and the death is not going to come now. And because of that, because we feel that aging and the death is not going to come now, so we keep on postponing in our practice, because we always feel there will be time for me to practice. At least I think that is what I have been doing myself, always feeling I could have the time to do long retreat and keep on postponing and postponing, I had that wish more than 20 years ago, and more than 20 years has passed away since then. Very fast, 20 years, it feels like very, very short time, and still feel like there is time for me to do that. And then suddenly 20 years more will go, and suddenly 20 more years go and you are gone, and you never found the time to do practice, something you very much want to do, and that is the example, because we always feel the time is on our side, time is on. We don't feel, oh, I could get sick, I could have a health issue that I might not be able to practice well next year. Or as I age, get older, I might not have same strength in my body, in my mind, to continue to practice. And of course, if the death comes, then of course. So therefore, not realizing that kind of, not realizing that make us to not to engage in practice immediately. Even some practice you want to engage, but not being able to engage immediately and keep on postponing because of that. And one day, suddenly, without any warning, the Lord of the Dead says, "It's your time, please come." And you can't say, "I'm not ready." We can't say, "Oh, I haven't finished my thing, I haven't finished my project. I still need to do 3 more year retreat. Can I come later?" There's no excuse. When the time of the Lord of the Dead come, when he says it's time, we go. And so then we could spend our life without much meaning, without much virtues, without much to show, without much to carry, something virtuous. We came in this life, spent whatever, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, and for what? Nothing to show. Nothing meaningful to show. Nothing meaningful to carry on, And then we lost a great opportunity. Great opportunity, We had all the right conditions to really engage in the practice, and we didn't utilize that. And then after death, who knows? If we are born in one of the lower realms, then even if we want to practice, then we don't have same condition, external, internal condition. We don't have the same conditions, Then we might regret. Even you regret, it's too late. Even you want to practice, almost too late, At the moment, it's never too late. And so that is what we have to realize. We have to understand, realize, and then utilize that, that is the key. That is the advice here Shante was giving by that understanding, And you see, I like some of my friends or friends' families or friends, or my relative, many of them in recent time, died suddenly without. And we could be one of them anytime. Nobody saw it coming. They were not expecting. Family was not expecting. Suddenly, gone. And then I have other friends or friends, families. Suddenly they found out they have sudden cancer or sudden disease, lung problem or cancer or different things. Again, unexpectedly, They weren't expecting when they went to check up to find that, or whatever small problem they might be having, symptoms. Didn't expect to find that. And we could be one of them any day, I'm feeling very good now, and tomorrow I might not feel so well, and I might go to the hospital and check up, and then they might find out something I wasn't expecting. Nobody was expecting. My health could change quickly and suddenly. Death could come quickly and suddenly, and so nothing is, guaranteed or predictable, everything is unpredictable, impermanent, unstable. That being the nature, without taking granted that we will have a health on our side, age on our side to do practice in the futures. Instead of that, try to practice immediately now. Now, in the present, what we have is the present. You realize that. Future is not in our breath, not in our hand. We can hope, but that is all we can't take for granted. But what we have in our moment, in our hand, is the present, and therefore utilize the present to make as much as meaningful as possible in engaging our practice of the Dharma, in trying to reduce those delusions, in trying to be more compassionate, more kind, caring, in order to trying to develop more wisdom, and in trying to be more benefit and more help to those around us and those who need help as much as possible. And so, if we are able to do that, then even when, something happens in relation to our health, or even a death comes suddenly, at least, we think, oh, I've spent my life as not so bad, I've utilized my life in some meaningful way. I've been able to practice. I've been able to, through practice, I've been able to become a little bit more compassionate than before. I've been able to be more kind than before. I've been able to grow spiritually, to become less greediness, less impatience, and all, that I have been able to have more wisdom and more understandings, that I have been able to be help and benefit to the individual, to the society. At least maybe I have tried. I have not been, at least I've not hurt and harmed so many others, at least intentionally. And so then you can kind of, you have less regret, less guilt, and more peace with your own life, and something you can rejoice, something legacy you can leave behind, Legacy doesn't have to be like such a, someone who have saved thousands of people's lives or all this, Legacy can be something that inspire your children, your grandchildren as a person, someone who is compassionate, kind, someone who inspired them to be that love and compassion person. Our grandfather, our grandmother was a very kind, compassionate person. Something they can talk about proudly. Proudly they can talk about, oh, my parent, my grandparent was kind, compassion, caring, helping, understanding. Instead of thinking, oh, my grandfather or my parent or grandparents, or very nasty and cruel, and they don't want to talk about it, because they feel kind of embarrassed or ashamed or all of that, So, what kind of legacy we want to leave behind to our children, our grandchildren, our nephew, our niece, our relative, And if we can leave a little bit of that kind of legacy, then I think our life, not only our life has meaningful, we leave something behind, something positive to the coming generations, at least within your families, friends and friends' families. When you talk about that person, always there's something, how kind, compassionate, generous that person is. And that's something that inspires them to become like that, And so So it's important to sometimes to reflect. Sometimes it's important to contemplate and reflect. How I want to be remembered when I die after I'm dead. How do I want to be remembered by my families and friends and their families and friends and their coming generation? How do I want to be remembered? Do I want to be remembered? He was very greedy, very greedy, very selfish, very impatient, very short temper, very easily get angry, very, or do we want us to be remembered as a more kind, compassionate, caring, loving, generous, helpful, And it is not just about ourselves. We are not talking about ourselves. By them remembering whatever quality of us, it affects them. It affects them how they want to become, what they want to become. And so we continue to, even we are no more in the world, we continue to help them. We continue to benefit them in that way. Yeah, For example, even in my family, my grandmother was extremely kind, compassionate, and my mom, and very generous. And it was known, she was known for her incredible kindness, caring, generosity, whole in the village, and everyone's known, and everyone talk about that. So then, it inspires yourself to become like that. Oh, I want to be like my grandma, who was so much compassionate, kind, caring, and generous, and this and that, So it is not just legacy that she lived, and it's not about her, but it's what she inspired the coming generation in that way, through her example. Even the people who have not seen her directly, but still they hear about that, and then they get inspired by that. And so I think, I think that is something. And then, when shall I be able to extinguish the pain of those tormented by the fires of suffering? So by cultivating a strong compassion, then with the rain of my accumulated happiness that is sprung from the clouds of my merit, So cultivating a strong compassionate mind, wanting to extinguish the fire of the suffering of sentient beings, through the rains of happiness, the positive, our own virtues, wealth, and our own body, our skills, whatever that we have accumulated through the clouds of rains. And so thereby, if we can extinguish their fire of suffering directly through the rains of our virtues and our behavior, our actions, our acts, we try to do as much as possible. And even those we cannot do directly, at least we make dedication and prayer that we'll be able to do that. Due to all my virtues, due to all my merit that I have created, may I be able to, may I be able to free the pain and suffering of all sentient beings. So we try to act compassionate way to reduce the pain and suffering of others as much as possible. And those which we cannot at the moment, at least we keep in our prayer and we dedicate our virtues and merit to be able to do that. So that is what. And then by having in the manner of not referring to true existence, respectfully gather accumulation of merit. And when by referring to others, we'll be able to reveal the emptiness to those who are rest and sad. So it is saying, so then we need to engage in the practice of two collections, the collections of merit and the collection of wisdom. And then we try to create the collections of, merit through the love, compassion, and Bodhisattva mind, and through the practice of generosity, moral discipline, and so forth. And we try to create that. And when we engage into the creation or collection of merit or the method, then we try to do without clinging and grasping, by understanding that the object of compassion are empty of truly existence. Yourself, who is cultivating the compassion, it says empty of truly existence. The act of being compassionate itself is empty of truly existence. So through understanding all of them non-truly existent, therefore, while you cultivate compassion, but without any clinging and grasping, and through that wisdom and compassion, then we collect and gather the two collections, and through that, then we, achieve enlightenment and be benefit to other sentient beings. So, as well as once we have that, once we have the wisdom realizing the emptiness and the compassion, then we can help them with our own direct experience how to cultivate that wisdom of the wisdom of emptiness. And so that by helping them to cultivate the wisdom of emptiness, so then they can overcome their own delusions and their own suffering. And so in that way, then we can help and guide and lead them and inspire them with our own direct experience. And so then helping them to understand the emptiness, helping them to develop the wisdom, realizing the emptiness. And through that, that is how we can really help and benefit them in a much more meaningful way. Of course, we can help and benefit other sentient beings when they are hungry, feeding them, when thirsty, giving them drink, when they're doing, medicine or other help with providing those medicine and that. But again, those help is very temporary, You feed them one day and then next day again they are still hungry. You can feed them their whole life, but still next life they might be hungry. Someone might be sick and we might be able to help them now, but then they might get sick again. And even we might be able to help them taking care of their whole life, but again they could be sick again next lifetime. So we can help, but it is not kind of real, we can be able to help them more than that in a much more meaningful way, a much more better way. And that is to help them to have the love, compassion, helping them to develop the wisdom realizing emptiness, helping them to overcome their own delusions. And we do that with our own direct experience for having done ourselves. And then when you are able to help them in that way, then we can really help them very profound way. Then we are able to help them in a very, very, very profound way. Because then we're helping them to solve their problem permanently, not on temporarily, but we are helping them to solve their problem permanently. Not on superficial level, from the bottom of the problem, from the very root of the problems. And so therefore that is what And then even we can't do now because we don't have those experience or realization ourselves. Again, we make all these dedications and pray that may we be able to help them to overcome their delusion. May we be due to all our virtues. May we be able to help all sentient beings to reduce all their suffering, overcome their all suffering, and the root cause of all suffering, all the delusion, the fundamental ignorance. May I be able to show them, lead them how to develop loving kindness, compassion, bodhisattva mind, especially here, the wisdom of relaxing emptiness. And so through that, then, we try to dedicate our virtues in that way, and we try to practice that way as much as possible in actions whenever. So with that, I think we finished the chapter 8. Okay. Yeah, so
nobody added anything for dedication, so I'm just going to read what I have, the people that I have on here. So we'll dedicate for people with obstacles. There's Les J, Mary Jo, victims of fires in California, Christy, Eden, Harmony, Serena, Dasha, Tiffany, Dustin, Abby, Homoyun Mazandi, Ruda Bay, Nini, Cheyenne Tierra, Sarah Jacobson, Mindy, people in California near fires, Doug, 40 million immigrants seeking refuge, 20 million who are children. Anybody else? No? Okay. For illness, Clara, Brenda, Adrian, Luis Montoya, Rosa Maria Garcia, Sarah Hanlon, Davina Cohen, Z the cat, Thor the horse. Those who have recently died, Cinnamon Bear, Chipmunk, 2 young house wrens, Amy W., victims of fires in California, Kai, Lobsang Kakel, Andy Miera, those killed in Yemen, those killed in the Beirut explosion, Paljor, Bird, Daniel Terrazas, and Louisa's friend.
And a young cottontail rabbit.
Cottontail rabbit. Okay.
Yes.
okay. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. To the Jiangxin Zhonggun Jiawe, Tenzin Zhongbe, Kunso Togo, Zhou Song Ko Wei Le Mo Tu Zhou, Ha Dao So Du Jie Guan Bu Sha Den Shou. The Venerable One, to you whose kindness exists that of all conqueror for those who wander in the far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intention of descending again into the family of far distant land, we make this request, O Lama, please live long. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening. Thank you for joining. And I think next week, I think we are going to have subjects, different subjects, just for that feminine arts, and then we discuss with some member, and so it is going to be on the 3 or 4 kayas of the body, 3 or 4 type of the different Buddhas or kayas, that, and then after that we'll continue the chapters on the 10, the dedication chapters. So okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Thank
thank you.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night,
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Geshe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.